telling everybody the good news, the core of the joy, and I appreciate
that. Usually gets you there by preaching from across the top.
What is going on, y'all? This is Josh from Team Super Shoe, and welcome back to another episode of the Shoe Show. We're not talking about rain boots like they needed out in North Wilkesboro yesterday. Now we're talking about the one and only Corey LaJoie, the Super Shoe of NASCAR, and just anything NASCAR related. Super pumped to have you guys here. Today we have on our buddy, Derek Nelson. We're going to talk some racing. Derek, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are y'all doing out there in the YouTube world? I hope y'all are doing fine. Staying dry.
If y'all are watching, if you could please like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. If you haven't hung out with us on Facebook, that's where it's all started. Team Super Shoe on Facebook. We would be live there right now, but unfortunately, Facebook is frowning upon us going live for some reason. So we're just going to have to do it this way. And finally, want y'all to right now, anybody watching or anybody watches the replay before 5:30 today Eastern, so 4:30 Derek's time. You need to go here, NASCAR.com/fan vote. Vote for our boy Corey LaJoie. Of course, we want him to race in, but you know, we know who we cheer for in the team, and that they have an uphill battle every week. So anything that we can help them out, get out to the main race tonight, because I want to see them competing for the win in the main. So other than that, we're here to talk about some classic All-Star or the Winston highlights, kind of preview tonight, and chat about some things going on. So Derek, what's going on with you, man?
Not a mucho, man. Just watching all those people out there, hoping that they learn their lesson from Chicago last year and maybe put some floaties on or packed them in their suitcases, brought some snorkels. I saw a video, as a matter of fact, of one of the crew members doing belly flops off of the top of pit walls. So, hey, living in the moment, you know, you got to take advantage of the opportunities the good Lord gives
you. Yeah, for sure. Well, wanted to start off our conversation tonight talking about our favorite All-Star moments. Now, we normally would have Mike on, and he was ready to go. Unfortunately, he had some technical issues. So, Mike, we hate that you're not here, brother, but we'll still continue to show your highlights. And so we collected our favorite All-Star moments in the past years. And so, Derek, why don't you take us down memory lane to your first, or to your favorite there?
Well, I tell you what, when I first started watching this NASCAR stuff, Casey Kane is the one that brought me into it. So I was a Casey Kane fan. And by the time my favorite All-Star moment came around, he was going through a bit of a drought. He won one handful of races, but it was looking pretty bleak. You know, Ray Evernham brought Gillette into the picture and started to step back a little bit. And we needed something, the Casey Kane fans and Nine fans, other than Budweiser coming on the car, we needed something else to excite us. And Casey stepped up, man. You know, we, the fans, put him in the show. And then he went on to win the thing from last place to first place. I mean, it was just a spectacular moment to be a Casey Kane fan. You know, at that point, people were doubting him. You know, he was had this tremendous rookie year, and you know, won his first race his sophomore year, and then just kind of went into a slump. And what's even better is after he got the win, just to prove it wasn't a fluke and it wasn't happenstance, he decided that he was going to follow that up the following weekend by winning the 600, just to kind of put a shh on all the haters out there. And I'd watched a couple of the All-Star races before, but that was the first one I was actually invested in. And there may have been some hooting and hollering over here on my side of things.
Yeah. All right. And our friend Michael Bostic would have been here, and wanted you to take us down this classic memory of the T-Rex.
Yes. The car that wasn't necessarily cheated up, but they were told to never bring it back to the racetrack again. Ray Evernham was one of the last great innovators back before the rule book was like it is today, where you have to play with indented windscreens and whatnot. You can still see that car over at the Hendrick Museum today, as a matter of fact.
Yep. Pretty cool. And you did something right when they're changing the rule books because of something you did. So pretty good classic memory there. My pick. So my this isn't my ultimate pick, but something I found when I was doing some research that I thought was quite interesting, considering where we are this year. Was the in 2016 the All-Star Open. These two guys here racing for the win for the All-Star Open. This is Kyle Larson in the 42, and the 24 was actually Chase Elliott. I believe, was it? This is he didn't win the championship in the 24, right? It was in the 9.
Yeah, it was in the 9. He didn't win his first race till he was in the 9.
Okay, so these two guys, up and coming drivers here, wheeling it, and you'll see at the end here, they end up, door slamming each other, and just to get into the All-Star. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm hoping for a little bit of aggression from Corey tonight, and that we can at least make it into the main. Yeah, here we go. Looks real similar to what we just saw. Him door slamming Buescher for the win just a week or two ago.
He's just trying to put some aero drag on him.
Sure, right, drag. So, and probably my favorite All-Star or Winston highlight, and probably most other people's too. An honorable mention will be the pass in the grass with Dale. Granted, it was more of like a save in the grass, but everybody loves it as the pass in the grass, and that's a legendary move. And there's so many other legendary things that has happened, but the one hot night would be the one that takes the cake. That's the one that you see all the documentaries on, and that's back in 1992 when Davey Allison won. He won after Dale there leading, got spun out by the 42 of Kyle Petty, and Kyle Petty then coming to the start-finish line, they're having a finish that we've seen a couple of times this year, nose to nose, and after the finish line, when the 28 won, 42 spun him out, reared him right into the wall, and it's pretty dirty. Ironically, I was watching to get ready for this. I watched the thing on YouTube of, it's probably something from ESPN or whatever, of One Hot Night, and Davey Allison ended up going to the hospital. So that's obviously a serious thing, and it's not good that anybody rears anybody into the wall. It's a pretty bad deal. But Dale was laughing about it, and he said, "Oh, it's just hard racing." And Kyle Petty didn't seem to have any regrets about it. And it's interesting now. It's still a dirty move, but it's fun to see these guys that are okay with a little bit of rough racing. This was just unsportsmanlike conduct here, but pretty cool to see. So hope we see some fireworks tonight, man. I feel like NASCAR has further and further gone away from the fireworks. We got, Kyle Busch is a little more tamer, and Harvick's retired, and Tony's gone, and, don't have a whole lot. So, maybe we can get old the old Chastain from 2 years ago back tonight or something. So
you forgot one of the highlights of the One Hot Night was the fact that it was the first large track, 1.5 miles, to be lit up, which was part of the significance of that night. It was the first time they had lights on it. And I think I heard an interview with Kyle Petty, because he does a lot of stuff now with TV. He does different shows and whatnot, and he's a lot more vocal since he's gotten remarried and has become a family man. And he's talked about that finish several times, and it was really just kind of a situation where they were going for the same spot on the track at the same time, and pretty much what you have with Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven at Darlington. The cars just kind of locked together, and then just the momentum of the cars together and the way they came apart. Davey got the nasty dirty end of the stick, and the exact spot where he hit the wall right in the front tri-oval was just, it was a perfect poo-poo storm. But thankfully Davey wasn't hurt too bad for that and went on to have some spectacular races afterwards. Kyle, I bet he had the career he had.
Yeah. So speaking of all-star races and things we enjoy quite a bit, you had mentioned the 2008 win by Casey Kane. That was my first time out in Charlotte for a race and my own time seeing a race at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And I wanted to bring up some highlights from 2008. I actually went up there. It was the trip of my life as a NASCAR fan. I got to check out all the shops and even DEI, and it was classic stuff. And it was pretty cool to see. Wanted to share some pictures here and just talk about it. So this was something I really enjoyed out there. This was the Pit Crew Challenge. It was in one of their local stadiums, like a basketball stadium. And basically it was like what they did on pit road yesterday, but change the tires, fuel it up, push it down. So the 08 cars that are out there on the outside, they would go, and each one would be a different thing. So you'd have change these tires, fuel it up, this and that, and then they would have to run to the car and drag the car to the finish line, essentially pushing it like, back in the day when it wouldn't start up right away. So that was really cool, and it was really cool to see the drivers come out. I don't think I included it in here because we were kind of in a rush to get going, but I have a picture of Jimmy and Chad coming out of one of the tunnels where the basketball team would come out, and they're just sitting there watching it right next to me. So really cool to see the drivers just down dressed and just, enjoying the festivities. And I love this type of stuff. I love that they're focusing not just on the driver and the race, but they have so much more cool things. This is me and my mom. We have been going races since I was, I don't know. My first race was in 1998 for the Daytona 500. So that would make me 11, turning 12. And so it was cool to come in here. Her and I's favorite drivers were right behind us, and Hendrick's shop. If anybody watching this has not checked out Hendrick's shop, they're missing out. I'm sure it's even cooler now. I haven't been there since then. This was the burnout competition they had before the race at Charlotte, and I think Harvick won, but they would just have to kind of do burnouts in those parameters of those cones and not knock any of them over. So that was fun. And then the race in itself was just awesome. I always loved Charlotte. I feel like it's kind of, the magic has kind of gone away. But I think it's, the cars that just started changing, cars, tires, all that. So, but I've always really enjoyed it. This is back when it was Lowe's Motor Speedway, and really enjoyed like just the yellow walls, and like that was just, there's something special about Charlotte, back then, especially the All-Star race. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate the skill that it takes to win the 600, but to me, the All-Star race is the more exciting of the two. That race is more about longevity and getting there, and I get that. But All-Star race has always been one of my favorite races, even when we've had some crappy years with Texas, and even Bristol didn't put on a good All-Star race. So hoping we get back to Charlotte All-Star race someday soon. So, and I wanted to, and one more thing before I pass it on to you and your highlights. Funny story about Casey Kane. So I don't think that this was, I'm pretty sure this was in 07. But it wasn't at Charlotte. It was at Daytona. There was a, this stage with people like doing like this contest, and like if you want to enter, and they're playing rock music, and you had to play guitar with a fuel can. Is that right? Is that the fuel can, the gigantic thing? So yeah. They had that obviously empty. It was probably just a prop or whatever. But they said you come up here and you rock out, and I don't even know if it had to do with the fuel can or not, but I grabbed it And I was up there and on stage and was trying to play up the crowd. And I grabbed the fuel can and I start air guitaring it. And then I lick it like, and everybody, woo! And I did not win. So a Dale Jr. fan won, and I was wearing Jimmy Johnson gear. So I think that's the reason why they were, hating. But either way, I rocked out and licked a gas can. And bringing in Casey Kane into this mix, either before the contest or after the contest, they had interviews with a few drivers, and Casey Kane was one of them. And Casey Kane, and they do the same thing to him. They play music and be like, Casey, come on, rock out with this fuel can, or and he just stood there like he is so socially awkward, like you could tell he was not normally the life of the party. So thought that was funny. I've always remembered that. I think that might have been the same stage that I found out that Greg Biffle came on the stage and told us about he peed his pants during a race, and they were under like a red flag, and it streamed down the, I don't know, Daytona or whatever. And they said, "Hey, we think you're leaking something." He says, "No." So when I was a kid, I used to call him Greg Piddle. So that was that.
Yeah, I've definitely gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, from Casey Kane all the way to Corey LaJoy. Personality is just a little smidge different, But I was I think I was one of the few guy Casey Kane fans, because most of the people I would see at the track that had Casey Kane swag on were of the female persuasion.
Yeah, he did have pretty eyes.
Hey, all I remember is the first race I ever saw in 2004, him and Elliott Sadler going at it, and then like really spectacular finish. And then racing Matt Kenseth later in the year, spectacular finish. Finished second so many times. That was good racing. I didn't even know what the kid in the car looked like. And then next thing you know, my wife bought me a hat. And next thing you know, I'm a fan. And the one race I actually got to see him in at the track in 08, he didn't even finish a race. It was so disheartening. No, he did, but he had the number 9 tape diagram on the side of his car because he had gotten caught up in one of the few big ones at Talladega that year. But I'm sorry, I digress.
So tell me about your All-Star trip.
Well, my All-Star trip was the first race back at North Wilkesboro, and it was phenomenal. There was a special feeling in the air, special type of electricity. You hear people talk about that all the time when it comes to special moments, but that's what the weekend was like. Regretfully, by the time they had the All-Star race, NASCAR had stepped in and started to fix up the facility at North Wilkesboro. But, walking and seeing that wall, which was of so much significance over the years as the track sat and, basically started to fall into disrepair and got to the point where nobody thought it could come back. When you see that wall, it got real. And then once you go in the stands and you see the track and how one side goes downhill, the other side goes uphill, it's just, there was a special vibe, man. All the fans were happy. You didn't see anybody upset. Now this is, usually I go to Talladega. That was my first race experience. That's where I've been to the most. And you see people and you're like, are these people really NASCAR fans? Or are they just here because it's Talladega and it's a party track? And you didn't get that vibe at all walking into North Wilkesboro the whole weekend. Everybody was there to have a good time. They had their driver's swag on. Marcus Smith was making the round, so I had the opportunity to meet him. This was actually on the Saturday before the race. So if you watch the racing now on track, on the backstretch, there was a set of stands. Well, this year they've replaced it with campers, but there was a little roadway where they would open the track between activities where the drivers or whoever, team personnel, could come off and on the track. And found that spot, and ran into several people coming and going. And then Marcus Smith showed up, and I just wanted to make damn sure that I shook his hand and thanked him for everything that he's done for that facility and for the sport. And then got my picture taken with him. There were several other drivers that were coming and going, but that was one of the memorable moments. And I was there the whole weekend with my brother. That was his first racetrack outside of Talladega, and he loved it. The obviously with the Moonshine tie-in to North Wilkesboro, there was several drink stands, and he frequented a few of them, but kept it social, not too wild and crazy. Everything was great that weekend until Kyle Larson decided that he was going to ruin it all for everybody except for the Kyle Larson fans. And then that's when it kind of, like, that was the first time all weekend sitting in that seat, looking that sunset. You know, this was before Kyle Larson stunk it up, that everything was on high. And then, you know, he was at least courteous enough after he won the thing to do a burnout around the entirety of the track so everybody could see the race winner, as if we hadn't seen him leading like umpteen laps before that. Like, we needed a part 2 to the Kyle Larson show. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of disappointing that Corey didn't get in. I was pushing a lot on Team Super Shoe to try to get people to vote. But we did get to see him on track in the open and practicing. The pit crew challenge that you had mentioned earlier, you know, on pit road, that was pretty nice. You know, they got to see him race into the pit stop and then watch him change the tires and then race out. Got to see the old Schluter car that's behind me. Got to see it up close and personal. And look, y'all, if y'all haven't voted, I don't care if you step away for a second. Go get your 5 votes in, then come back. I mean, we need to give Shoe a solid plan B. Obviously, winning the Open is plan A. But there is not one great leader in history from the beginning of time to today that did not have a plan B. You got to have a backup plan. We Shoe fans, penny stackers, we are his backup plan. So
Yep. It would be pretty cool if Team Super Shoe got him into the race. You know, obviously, again, I'd like to see him go out and dominate the Open, but you know, it would be pretty cool to show him that his fans got his back. So next thing I wanted to talk about is this new in-season tournament bracket thing they're going to do in 2025, middle of the season. So this is the bracket here. I think it gets would get bigger than that because they had said there would be 32 drivers. So there must be some type of prelims to get into that, because if you count, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So that's 16 drivers to start there. So
16.
No, 16 total. Unless it's race, the top left and top right is 1, 2, and 1, 2. I thought those were slots for names. I don't know.
No, each line is representative of a driver.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's, I guess, going to be a top 32 drivers. They're going to take, I guess they're going to do their own point system where just in 3 races, they will accumulate points in 3 races for the top 32 drivers of, you know, middle of the summer. And they haven't announced every little detail about it yet, like what races those will be, all that. But that'll be the qualifying to get in there. And then you'll do a bracket just like any other sports with 1v1. So if, you know, Carson, Hocevar, and Corey would be, you know, 25th and 26th, they'd be put on, you know, they'd be going against each other, and then they keep moving down the line. Ultimately, to give somebody $1 million, and kind of reminded me of the Noble Challenge. Kind of forgot about that until all this came about. It was going on from 98 to 2002, and basically they would have Noble 5 races select Noble 5 races that they would say drivers that would finish in the top 5 of each Noble 5 race would then be in the contention for the next Noble 5 race. And if a qualified driver went to win the next Noble 5 race, that would add $1 million bonus to that person. So, and to add to that, I doubt this actually happened. I'd be curious, but I read that 5 selected fans will be paired up with the qualified drivers. If the driver won the bonus, which would be that the second race in, the selected of the qualified drivers would also win $1 million. So that's a pretty sweet deal. But it kind of reminded me of that, and I kind of like it. I wanted to know what your opinion is on, I mean, it is a gimmick. This isn't the championship or the Daytona 500 or any prestigious race, but still something to look forward to.
No, it's something different. And I mean, with any change that NASCAR implements, any gimmick they try to throw out, you're going to get people that are going to get upset and aggravated. I mean, shoot, when they first introduced double file restarts, they had a lot of the old school people upset. Well, you can't do that. Well, look what it's done for the sport. It is at the end of the day, an entertainment sport, not like wrestling, wrestling.
I'd be okay with that, though.
Was that?
I'd be okay with that, though. Some storylines,
Well, you see, and that's the wonderful thing about NASCAR. The storylines kind of develop themselves, and you don't need writers to sit back to come up with it. And I think this is a good opportunity. I mean, just think a couple years ago, you had Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain going at it with each other. It's kind of its own little built-in storyline. Well, what happens if this bracket pops up in the middle of that going on? And then suddenly, oh, look, they're going to be racing against each other to knock each other out of this. The Xfinity Series does it with their Dash for Cash. The Truck Series has their gimmick. I mean, you want to go all the way back. They had the the Winston Million. Where if you win, these crown jewel races, you get $1 million. So gimmicks go all the way back. I think you probably talk about 1961, 2, and 3. They had the precursor of what would become the All-Star race. Back then, gimmick, but you never know what NASCAR is going to bring to the table, and something like this gives regular drivers, a chance to win big money. And not just that, it also, if you're a driver that wins a race early, or say you win the Daytona 500, you've already checked off your win, you're good to go the rest of the season. You're pretty much, every driver is going to get on the track and try to win a race. But how many times do some of these drivers go to a track that's going to come up in the playoffs where they want to experiment with some kind of setup or some kind of special jiggity wiggity wiggity whack whatever thing on the car just for the playoffs? So hey, we're gonna tweak this and that because we know when we go back to the second race, the temperature is going to be different, blah blah blah, yada yada yada, because that's a race we really want to win. We don't really care about winning this race as much as that one, because that one's for the big trophy at the end of the year. So you put this bracket in there, $1 million is a lot of money. And so you're going to have smaller teams maybe try to step up their game. You're going to have bigger teams say, hey, look, $1 million will go a long way to our engineering program or something like that. So I'm all for it. The only thing I don't like about next season is something I think we're going to get into a little bit later on. And that's the bracket comes up as kind of a segue to promote the division of broadcasters. So like you get the last race on whichever broadcast channel. I haven't dedicated it to memory. I'll hopefully get it down by next year.
I think it's TNT and then Prime.
Well, TNT I think is going to have the bracket, and then I think Prime is going to. I could be wrong. I think Prime is going to launch it, or Prime is going to set the 32 cars, and then TNT is going to have the actual tournament itself.
Yeah, it looks like it's only 5 races. So,
yeah. So, I mean, it could be good. Just like any other gimmick or new thing that NASCAR's brought about, sometimes it's flopped and sometimes it's been really good.
yeah. Yeah. Either way, I'm excited. It gives us something to talk about. The season could be long and we can, kind of run out of things to talk about or be excited about. And you got the summer stretch where they have some, kind of the mediocre cookie cutter racetracks. You got the road courses and certain tracks that don't provide a whole lot of excitement. So I'm looking forward to it. Anything to keep us interested. And especially for a fan that's not as diehard as us, we're going to watch no matter what. But, so hopefully it keeps people tuned in when it's not, Daytona or Indy or the, championship or anything like that. So,
we'll be doing this year. If Shu obviously has not been running as well as we would like him to be running. But if you threw a bracket program like that in the middle of this lull, then hey, maybe this is something that can turn around his season. Maybe they'll step up their game for that. So,
yeah,
immense potential
for sure. So speaking of Shu and how he hasn't been running super great this year, Darlington last week, and he finished 16th, which was finally a good solid finish. Finish that we honestly expected to be kind of the norm for the whole season. I wanted to know your thoughts on the season so far. We're 13 in. We got, I don't know, another 5 or so before we're halfway. So wanted to know your outlook on the season, and are we getting better, or is this going to kind of be the norm for the whole season?
I would like to think maybe we've stumbled upon something so things will get better, because other than the things we've been doing here on the Shoe Show and over on Team Super Shoe with the LaJoin the Fiesta, it's been kind of a lackluster season to be a shoe fan. Don't get me wrong, I'm still there. I'm still pulling for my guy. When you step up to be a Corey LaJoy fan at the point in time where I did, it's a turning point in his career. It's a turning point in Spire Motorsports. And then they just bit off a large chunk of whatever they bit off for this season. And I don't think things are going the way they want them to. And it's not like they're just sitting back accepting it. They're working on things. They've taken TJ Bell down from the spotter stand, and they're trying a new spotter with Shu. And don't know if that played into his good finish last weekend, but when you have the ability to be able to move parts and pieces around like that, that's always a good thing. Just look at what's going on with Kyle Busch this year. Everybody's talking about how Kyle Busch shouldn't have gone over the Richard Childress because he's having a lackluster year, and you need to get out of there. Well, they weren't saying that last year when he was winning a couple of races and had made it into the playoffs. The optimist in me would like to think that race last weekend was definitely a turning point. They're starting to get the arithmetic right for the program. And, I think it's important for them to start running like they were last year and not lose focus of that. And then once they've established that they can get back to where they were, then you have to concentrate on the better finishes, especially if you get back to tracks you've already been to once this year. There's no excuse for repeating the same mistakes. I think that's the definition of insanity, is
right.
trying things over and over again, and the same way you did it before and expecting a different result. So
yeah, we have we've had our conversations, you, me, Mike, and friends from Team Super Shoe. We've talked about kind of the reality things is that the sport is a business, and hate to see TJ go, that definitely wasn't, if I were to pick, I mean, I'm no expert of the Cup team by any means. We're just fans, but TJ wouldn't have been the person that I immediately picked to be the guy that, we, let go for performance issues. But, there's, three sides to every story, and I'm sure there's a reason, more so than what us average fans would know. But I'm glad that I do know that Spire has been having some hard meetings, and they've been talking about competition, and I'm glad that they are trying to move forward because, like you said, you can't keep doing the same thing and then expecting a different result. Now, obviously, people get better at their jobs and learn more things as the, seasons go on. But at a point, Corey, I think this is his 7th season, something like that. And there's a point where, they've got to decide, well, like, listen, like, we got to go now. We got to move forward. And, unfortunately, sometimes that means that personnel is going to change. And it sucks for us, even, because you and I, we get to meet these guys and do the show and do interviews. And we want it all to stay the same because we're friends and because we like these guys. But, we also want to have a competitive car. So it comes to a point where it's a business and they kind of have to make those cutthroat decisions. Thankfully, I don't. So I guess get to be a fan and support them.
Somebody gets paid to make those decisions, and they get paid good money to do it. I think something else to look at, which I just thought about, is when you look at the relationship of a driver and a crew chief, car chief, spotter, it's one big family. It's like when you're married. The longer you're married to somebody, you're going to see little changes here and there as you mature. This is the first team that Corey's been with where he's got tenure, but he's brought over some of the people that were with him over at Go Fast, right? So, as the team grows and matures, and as Corey adapts to the situation that he's in, maybe things are just changing to where the cogs no longer mesh up equally. So you've got to take out a cog of lesser, not least, but lesser significance than another one, plug a new one in, see how that works, and then hopefully get on that successful setup. So I think that's something else to consider as well. It's not like Corey in the car today is the same Corey that was driving a car 2 years ago. And then even if he was the same driver today that he was 2 years ago, Spire Motorsports is by no means the same team they were 2 years ago. So there's a lot of growth in the team and the personnel there that you have to consider as well.
Yep. So moving on, expectations for tonight's race at North Wilkesboro. We have for the All-Star race tonight, we have 200 laps. All of them count, so green or yellow. They have to start on the soft option tire, and then they have a mandatory 4-tire pit stop where they can choose hard or soft there. It said that they have to have 2 cautions. I don't know if that means that there's 2 stage breaks. I'm not sure. That's what I read on NASCAR.com. So wanted to know your expectations to these soft tires. Tires, they said that Goodyear believes that it's going to add a half a second a lap. And after watching practice yesterday where Corey was like dead last the whole race or a whole practice, and then I realized he didn't put on the soft tires until right at the end, and he put soft tires on the place like 6th. So wanted to know your expectations on the tires because it's quite interesting.
Well, being a motorsports fan, not just a NASCAR fan, and having watched IndyCar and Formula One for a handful of years, I'm excited to see what NASCAR does with it. I'm also a bit hesitant because the way they're trending right now with the changes they're making to this, everybody's got the same car. All the parts and pieces are provided by, this company over here. they're trending real dangerously close to a path that will eventually lead to a boring Formula One style racing. But for today, I'm not looking that far ahead. I'm excited because again, like we were talking about a little while ago with gimmicks and whatnot. Depending on how much leadway they give them with the tires, I think it can play into strategy. That always opens up a lot of can't think of the word right now, but a lot of possibilities. The track looks fast. It's brand new. It's brand new asphalt. The trucks look like they were racing a lot better this year than they were last year. So if that's a precursor of what's to come with the Cup cars, then I would like to see that style of racing, maybe even more competitive. We do know the short track program has been kind of meh this year, last year with the new car. So hopefully, that's one of the things people are talking about with the new car. Well, let's do something different with the tires. Let's give them more horsepower. I am a huge fan of Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear and now the Grand Tour. Even his Clarkson's Farm, which I would highly suggest you people check out because it's funny and entertaining, and even my wife likes it. And he's all about more power, and that's what I like. Give these guys unbridled horsepower. There's two pedals that can help them control it. And but for tonight, the tires, I'm optimistic, and I'm ready to see them actually get on track and compete.
Yeah. Yep, I am also excited. I love when they make these experimental changes, and some things that they have tried in the past here is at the All-Star race that eventually became the standard was things like double file restarts. They had the choose cone and the number placement. They moved it forward. Thankfully, they did not keep the underglow of the cars. That wasn't that. It looked cool for pictures.
Oh, it was awesome. It was spectacular. One little neon tube under the back end of a car, and there's 3 different colors, and you don't get to match the sponsorship on the car and the paint job, so it looked really awkward. That wasn't art. No, it was a poo-poo show.
Yep. So, and that's one thing I've never watched F1. The most I've watched of F1 is the Netflix documentary, but IndyCar I used to watch quite a bit, and I always enjoyed the ideas of having the softer or harder tire or having push to pass that they have. I always thought that was kind of cool, and it put an extra little element to make things exciting, especially for IndyCar because they don't really have side by side. So like NASCAR does. So I always like seeing this, and I like seeing that we're trying things. And at this point, I haven't been a big fan of this car. So if we get these optional tires and that becomes a thing, then if it makes the racing better, if they become more side by side, then so be it. We have these finishes besides the plate races. You have, or I call them plate races, but they're not. But Atlanta and Daytona and Talladega, excluding those. A finish like we had a couple of weeks ago at Kansas, I think it was Kansas, where there was the closest finish ever. That is very rare. And although I know people want to prop up this new car, but ultimately we would not have had that finish if Kyle Larson didn't door slam the 17 off of 4 twice in order to slow him down, and then have the whole controversy over the painted line versus the where the transmitter or whatever it's called. But and great finish. I mean, exciting, right? But that's not a product of the car. That's a product of Kyle Larson slamming his opponent. So I'm still not sold on this car. So I'm excited to see if maybe Goodyear brings something that maybe helps that out. So,
well, they may be moving in the right direction because you get the finish at Atlanta earlier in the year, which races like a super speedway now. The finish at Kansas, like you said, you described what led up to that finish, but you also have the Darlington finish, which there was probably some of the best racing that we've seen all season. As far as racing goes, some of the best racing we've seen all season up until, Chris Buescher and help me out here, Small Fry. He drives the 2311 car. Tyler Reddick.
Oh, the 45, yeah.
Yeah, up until he ran out of talent, that was pretty good. They had some side by side. They were getting a little dirty with one another, but nothing that was enough to upset anybody at the end of the race. But it could have just been situational,
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for tonight. I hope we see some more controversial moves. Wanted to know, last question before we move on from the All-Star race, is who do you see to be the controversial driver of the race? You got a lot of highlights of All-Star races where, or the Winston, where drivers spin people out or doors slamming each other or what have you. So who do you got tonight that's going to be the ESPN highlight?
I haven't really put much thought into that. Let's assume that there's going to be some side-by-side racing. Let's assume somebody's going to try to outbrake somebody going into one. So for those of you that don't know, the downhill section goes into one, and then it goes uphill into three. So when you're going into turn one, not only are you fighting the inertia from the engine or whatnot, but you're also fighting the downhill inertia. For what it is, and considering I don't think he's got to win yet this season, and granted it's exhibition style racing, I'm gonna have to go with Watermelon Man, Ross Chastain.
Yeah,
because he was getting a little rowdy in the truck race a little earlier on, and he's been quiet. So I think it's about time for him to rear his watermelon head.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm gonna go with two. So one, if Ty Gibbs makes it into the race, I'm gonna go with him. We know his history; he'll wreck his own teammate to win the race, and I think he will go Truck Series Ty Gibbs on somebody. So I think that'll be a thing. Or if he doesn't make it in, my second choice would be Chris Buescher, who has been the bridesmaid of the past 2 weeks. He's probably pretty frustrated, and he probably won't care as much this week. So regardless of if it's somebody he's beaten and banged with or not this past couple of weeks. So I could see those two. So, all right. So moving on.
I want part two.
Okay.
Real quick.
All right.
Let's talk the open. I'm going to go with Corey LaJoie being a wrecking ball because he needs to be. This is the point where he needs to step up and just, you're not really wrecking people if they're in the way of your progress. If there's a dream at the end of the tunnel and they're in between you and your dream, you gotta do what you gotta do to make the dream come true.
Absolutely.
So, find some bumpers, get them out the way, get into the main.
Yep. And speaking of that, anybody watching right now, you have less than an hour to vote for Corey LaJoie. So make sure you go vote at NASCAR.com/fan vote for our guy Corey, just in case he doesn't decide to wreck the top two, but he wrecks the rest of the field. So moving on, the next and final segment of the show is one of my favorites. It is Derek Skidlid.
Well, hello there, class. Sit down, settle in. Today, for Derek Skidlid, we are going to talk about NASCAR racing and moonshining. So, what you need to know is there's pre-war stock car racing and post-war stock car racing. Pre-war stock car racing, it was pretty much the guys from the Atlanta guys, which is your Dawsonville crew primarily. and then your Daytona guys. They were ones running into tracks. Those are the main three guys pre-war. You got Raymond Parks on the top, and his two guys, Lloyd C. and Roy Hall. They were the ones they go out to Lakewood in Atlanta. They were winning all these races. They were showing up at Daytona. They were competitive. Raymond Parks was the Rick Hendrick of early NASCAR. Sadly, Lloyd C. would never see the fruition or the birth of NASCAR because he was killed in a moonshining incident over some sugar with a family member of his. Something all three of those gentlemen have in common is moonshine. Raymond Parks, when he first got to Dawsonville, he was a moonshiner. He basically built his business, brought his cousins in, and they ran moonshine. So then moving on from those guys, you had people that were all close knit. You know, they were always wanting to compare their race cars. You know, my bootlegging car is faster than your bootlegging car, and they started out in fields. You know, if there was a farm field they can get into, they'd go run some circles. Horse tracks. You know, Lakewood Speedway in Atlanta was a horse track before they started running there. There you see the fruits of Raymond Park's labors as far as his race wins. But something that upsets me about NASCAR and moonshine is for a long time, the France family and NASCAR didn't want anything to do with the moonshining past until recently when North Wilkesboro came back. North Wilkesboro comes back, and now suddenly over the past few years, even before North Wilkesboro come back, they had a sponsorship deal with Sugarland Shines where they've got special anniversary edition moonshine jars. If it wasn't for moonshining, you wouldn't have NASCAR, right? So the guys pre-war, the moonshine runners that showed up, compared each other's race cars and raced against one another on track. A lot of these guys post-war, you know, they would meet up again later on with their modified cars. Before NASCAR was even born, they were racing at North Wilkesboro, and North Wilkesboro has moonshine history with it. Everybody thinks North Wilkesboro, Junior Johnson. Junior Johnson was a famous moonshiner. Interesting fact that before they actually had sanctioned races at North Wilkesboro, there were unsanctioned races, which was basically just a bunch of these moonshine guys getting together, having a place to run. Early days of NASCAR, when these moonshiners were running, they were running in cars. You see a picture of Red Boat there. So what you need to know about Red Boat is Red Boat was the Smokey Yunick of early NASCAR. As a matter of fact, Smokey Yunick looked up to Red Boat. Red Boat is the guy who would tune Raymond Parks' cars for his moonshine drivers. He would also tune the cars for the revenuers that would show up and were trying to catch the moonshiners. But they didn't pay as good as Raymond Parks did. You paid more money, you got more horsepower, you got more speed. Well, Red Boat was there early on, pre-war and post-war. Beaches of Daytona. Most of the guys, if you look back in the early days that ran cars for Raymond Parks, had Red Boat's garage on the side of them. But let's go to North Wilkesboro, 1947. See, that's a Raymond Parks owned car, and that's Big Bill France right there behind the wheel, driving a Red Boat special. Now, Red Boat, before I get too far off topic, he's the guy that's responsible for the name NASCAR. When they met at the Streamline Hotel in Daytona and they were tossing around ideas for different names, Red Boat came up with the idea for NASCAR, and they rolled with it. He's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why. You know, you'd have to ask somebody else. But so early North Wilkesboro race, 1947. That's actually what you're looking at there. The very first race at North Wilkesboro was a hodgepodge of moonshiners that were also race car drivers. You had guys like Ed Samples, who was the 1946 stock car champion. And then the eventual winner of the North Wilkesboro race, the first sanctioned North Wilkesboro race, was Fonnie Flock. And this was in 1947, before NASCAR was even around. Now, your moonshining ties with NASCAR and stock car racing, your first champions of stock car, well, it's not stock car racing. Back then, what they were running in is what would eventually become modified racing. The stock cars, the cup cars, wouldn't come around until 1948. But the precursors to NASCAR Cup Series were moonshine runners. 1946, Ed Samples used to run moonshine. 1947, the same guy that won the North Wilkesboro race that you're looking at pictures of, Fonnie Flock, used to run moonshine. The two went hand in hand. And Big Bill France apparently didn't have a problem with it back in the day, because the moonshine guys were putting butts in seats. And there you see Ed Samples all the way to the left, Fonnie Flock next to him. Don't know who the gentleman is in the middle, but to the far right is Big Bill, congratulating them on race wins. So eventually, NASCAR just decided they were going to clean up their act and they were going to get away from the moonshine thing. But if it wasn't for moonshine, you wouldn't have NASCAR. If it wasn't for these guys meeting in cornfields and forming races, you wouldn't have one of the most spectacular sports there are. Compare it to stick and ball sports. The guys that started your stick and ball sports, they were competing over who could hit a ball the farthest, run the fastest. These guys were running for police officers, modified hot rods. Curtis Turner, moonshiner before his dad made him quit. And then he just concentrated heavily on lumber business and stock car racing. And he was really good at both of them. There are names in the sport that are associated with running moonshine that you would never even think of, because it was taboo so much at one point in time. Kind of like Tim Richmond with AIDS was taboo in the 80s. The moonshine runners, they were taboo. You didn't want to talk about that. Lee Petty. That's right, Lee Petty. Richard Petty's dad, one of the first great champions of NASCAR. He used to run moonshine for a limited time back before his racing days. There's a hodgepodge of drivers that would make up the majority of the fields in the early days that were previous moonshine runners, and some of them still did. Earlier you saw a picture of Lloyd C. and Roy Hall. Roy Hall continued to do unlawful things for a while, and that's why a lot of people never heard of him, even though he was around post-war. Got in a lot of trouble with the law and eventually just had to stay away. And there's the most famous individual in NASCAR that is associated with moonshine, Junior Johnson. He was eventually pardoned, but I guess the whole premise of this class, this educational session, is to let y'all know that moonshine was an integral part of NASCAR, more so than what you see on TV. And so much so that even Wendell Scott used to do it back in the day. Past champions, past race winners, people that were the cornerstones on which NASCAR was built upon, all eventually, or at some point in time, ran moonshine. And depending on who you ask, Big Bill France, the first couple years of NASCAR, used moonshine money to build Daytona, to pay the purses for some of his races. And it's rumored that the briefcase you would see him walking around with a lot in the early days were generous gifts from his buddy, Raymond Parks. So let's not forget the true past of stock car racing. Let's not forget the guys that showed up and did what they did so we can have what we have today. And don't let the commercialization of moonshine take away from the spectacle of what it used to be back in the day. Because the stuff you're buying on the store shelf, it may say moonshine, but if you're paying taxes on it, is it really? Class dismissed.
Well, thank you, Professor. I appreciate that. So all right, man. Well, only thing left is some NASCAR racing starting in 14 minutes, or at least the TV coverage of it. So again, everybody watching, all one of you that I see a little eyeball says one person's watching. Go vote for NASCAR.com/fan vote. Use your wife's email, use your husband's email, use your work email, whatever email you need to use it. Cheat Corey into the race. We're all okay with it. And other than that, any final words, Derek, before we get off and go watch some racing?
No, I'm just going to say what I've been saying for the past several weeks regularly. Y'all, get shoe in the show. It's your job and your responsibility as a Corey LaJoie fan to make sure that we have his back and that he knows we have his back. Because all the times that he's taken time apart from his family to meet y'all at Arctic tents and gas stations, you know, how hard is it for you to sit in the comfort of the AC of your house or your car, if you're on lunch break or whatnot, and just go to a website, vote 5 times. It takes less than 2 minutes.
Yep. And it doesn't put you on any type of spam list or anything. So otherwise, Derek, thanks for coming on, man. And for everybody watching, if you could please comment, rate, or comment, subscribe, and share on YouTube. If you can come hang out with us on Facebook, that is where it's all started. Team Super Shoe on Facebook. We have a lot more conversation there than we do here. This is more or less kind of a outlet to chat or pregame or do interviews or whatever. So, and other than that, y'all enjoy the race tonight and go Corey LaJoie.